On one occasion, he was invited to a banquet where his host attempted to trick him. He told Nostradamus they would be eating pig that evening. He said he had a black pig and a white pig, and he invited Nostradamus to predict which of the two they would be eating. Nostradamus said, "The black one." The host then instructed the cook to prepare the white pig. Later that evening, as they were enjoying their meal, the host challenged Nostradamus to once more state which pig they were eating. Nostradamus replied, as he had before, "The black one." Triumphantly, the host then called for the cook to ask him to declare which of the two they were eating. The cook said that while he was preparing the white pig, it fell from the table. It was devoured by dogs, so he was forced to serve the black one. More and more, Nostradamus was becoming aware of his power to predict the future. But it wasn't until a personal tragedy struck that he took account of that power and changed his life accordingly. When the next wave of the devastating plague took the lives of his wife and 2 children in 1533, he fell into a deep despair. He retired to a life of seclusion and became a quiet, introverted man. He then wandered aimlessly throughout Europe for the next 10 years. Nostradamus was looking continually inward. He now discovered what it was he had to do. He returned to Salon, in the south of France, where he began to record his visions.
Seated at night in my secret study, alone, reposing over the brass tripod, a slender flame leaps out of the solitude, making me pronounce that which is not in vain.
He chose to write down his predictions in a 4-lined rhyming verse known as the quatrain. He wrote in his native French, but to protect himself from the superstitious witch hunters of the day, he confused the verse with Latin and Greek, and even anagrams. He wrote 1,000 quatrains, dividing them into 10 groups of 100 each, called centuries. The first edition of his quatrains was published before his death in 1566. They continue to be published to this day.
His visions, Nostradamus wrote, were received by a subtle spirit of fire, by a voice coming from limbo. And these voices and visions were often fragmented, and they were about things and events that Nostradamus himself couldn't understand. But still, he set them down in verse, in the quatrains. And obscure as these quatrains are to many of us, they were very clear to others. One quatrain, for example, the 35th of the 1st century, was quickly seized upon as suggesting that the reigning king of France, Henry II, would die in a jousting tournament. Nostradamus was quickly summoned before the king to explain the quatrain. The king said it was ridiculous. You would never participate in such a tournament. Nostradamus could only reply that he wrote what he saw.
The young lion will overcome the old one on the battlefield in single combat. In a cage of gold, his eyes will be put out. 2 wounds in one, then to die a cruel death.
Despite Nostradamus' warning, the king did joust in a tournament. His opponent was the Count Gabriel de Montgomery.
The young lion will overcome the old one. In a cage of gold, his eyes will be put out.
Nostradamus wrote many quatrains about the events in his homeland. He is said to have predicted the French Revolution of 1789, 234 years before it happened.
The Republic of the great city, with great harshness, shall not permit exit to the king. Being called by trumpets, the ladder shall be put to the wall, and the city shall repent.
It is estimated that Nostradamus wrote about 30 quatrains dealing with this epical moment in French history.
Despite the king, the coin will be brought lower. The people shall rise against their king. Peace being made, holy laws made worse. Paris was never in such great disorder.
Nostradamus wrote about places he could never have guessed at, places that in his time didn't even exist.
The husband, alone afflicted, will be mitred. Conflict will take place at the tile works by 500. One betrayer will be titled.
On the night of June 20th, 1791, a mob calling itself the Marseillaise 500 attacked Louis XVI's palace, built long after Nostradamus' death. The palace was called the Tuileries, which in French means the tile works.
Conflict will take place at the tile works by 500.
Then there is the remarkable quatrain in which Nostradamus wrote about the king's flight from Paris.
By night he will come to the forest of Rayen, a devious route, the white queen of stone and the grey king to Varennes.
Louis XVI, with his wife Queen Marie Antoinette, fled Paris in 1791, taking the odd route via the forest of Rennes. Disguised as a monk, he was dressed in grey, and he went to Varennes. Nostradamus also wrote about the fate of the royal couple.
The government taken over will convict the king.
The king was condemned to death.
The queen sent to death by jurors chosen by lot.
Marie Antoinette was condemned to death by a jury of revolutionaries. The first time royalty was tried by a jury chosen by lot.
And the prostitute shares the fate of the consort.
Madame du Barry, mistress of kings, also met her fate on the guillotine. Nostradamus' visions of the future of his homeland have been described as being uncanny. He is said to have heard the thundering footsteps of Napoleon's troops and to have seen the cost in human lives of Napoleon's adventures. In quatrain after quatrain, he's described the coming of 3 powerful and tyrannical leaders, men he called antichrists. He wrote that these men would lead their people through reigns of terror after first seducing them with promises of greatness. Napoleon is said to have been the first of the 3.
An emperor will be born near Italy, one who will cost his empire quite a high price. They will say that even among his supporters, he will be found less prince than butcher.
Napoleon, who was an emperor and not a king of France, was born near Italy on the island of Corsica. It was an unheard of place for a French ruler to be born.